I'm out. What the fuck happened with the sock down the straight? I had no fucking battery down the straight.
George Russell's Belgian Grand Prix did not end because he was simply beaten into less combs. It ended because his Mercedes lost the one thing Spa makes impossible to lose: power. Russell says he exited the first corner 35% down. The battery failed to recharge. The boost disappeared. The turbo did not recover. And by the time he reached the top of Eau Rouge, the battery was at 0%. Then Lewis Hamilton arrived. The Ferrari closed at enormous speed, the two cars made contact, and Russell was sent into the gravel before the opening lap was over. Hamilton received a 5-second penalty. But Russell immediately pointed toward something deeper. He said the collision should never have happened if his Mercedes had delivered normal speed on the straight. And that changes the entire story. Because the same electrical system that helped Mercedes dominate the opening races may have created a sudden performance cliff at the most dangerous point on the circuit. Subscribe to the channel, because the final detail reveals why this was not only a battery failure, but a possible turning point in Russell's fight against Kimi Antonelli. The Belgian Grand Prix began with Russell in a position of opportunity. He started near the front, surrounded by cars capable of winning, with one of the strongest machines on the grid beneath him. Mercedes had spent much of the season setting the standard. The car was especially effective whenever electrical energy deployment became important. Out of slower corners, the Mercedes could release power efficiently, accelerate strongly, and create gaps that other teams struggled to recover. That advantage had been visible from the opening race. In Melbourne, Mercedes produced a huge qualifying margin over the fastest non-Mercedes rival. The difference was not created only by the driver pressing the throttle earlier. Telemetry analysis suggested the throttle application was remarkably similar between Mercedes and its competitors. The real gain came from what happened after the driver pressed the pedal: energy harvesting, battery management, electrical deployment, the complicated systems operating behind the driver. In simple terms, Mercedes was better at collecting energy, storing it, and releasing it at the moment when acceleration mattered most. That was one of the foundations of its dominance. And at Spa, that same foundation failed Russell at the worst possible moment. The opening corner had gone well. Russell said he made a great start to the lap and tucked himself directly behind Max Verstappen. That should have placed him inside the fight near the front. He had position. He had the Mercedes package. He had the chance to attack. Then the battery did not recharge at the first corner. That sentence sounds technical. Its consequence was immediate. The current Formula One power units depend heavily on electrical energy. The combustion engine still produces enormous power, but the battery system provides a major part of the total output. When the battery is charged and deployment works correctly, the driver receives the full performance expected from the car. When that electrical support disappears, the car does not simply become slightly slower. It can fall off a cliff. Think of an electric bicycle climbing a hill. With the motor assisting, the rider maintains speed. Remove the assistance without warning, and the rider does not slow gradually. The effort required changes instantly. Russell experienced the Formula One version of that problem. He left the first corner 35% down. That was already serious. But the battery still did not recover. The boost problem remained. The turbo did not sort itself out. And as the Mercedes climbed through Eau Rouge, the available battery level fell to 0. At Spa, that is one of the worst places for it to happen. The run through Eau Rouge and Rijlanden demands total commitment. The car descends, changes direction, compresses, then climbs sharply toward a blind crest. At the top, the circuit opens onto the Kemmel Straight. Every driver expects maximum acceleration. Every driver behind is preparing to use the toe. Every car is building speed toward the braking zone at less combs. Russell reached that section without the electrical power he expected. He was not only slower. He was exposed. Cars behind him were still receiving their normal deployment. Their closing speed increased rapidly. Russell became the slow point in a pack that was still attacking at full intensity. That is why he described the situation as dangerous. A complete mechanical failure can sometimes be easier for the field to understand. The driver slows dramatically. The team gives instructions. Warning flags may appear. The car moves away from the racing line. A partial power failure is different. The car continues. It still looks active, but it no longer moves at the speed everyone expects. The following drivers may not recognize the problem until they are already closing. That creates uncertainty. Is the driver ahead defending? Has he lifted? Is he preparing for the braking zone? Has the engine failed? Should the cars behind go left? Should they go right? At Spa, those decisions happen in fractions of a second. Russell lost acceleration. The cars behind arrived. Hamilton became one of them. And by the time the field reached Les Combes, the entire group had been compressed by the Mercedes failure. The contact became the final visible event. But the sequence had started much earlier. It started when the battery did not recharge. It continued when the boost failed. It became critical when the battery reached zero at the top of Eau Rouge. And it ended when Russell no longer had the speed required to control his position. That does not completely remove Hamilton's responsibility. The stewards gave him a 5-second penalty for causing the collision. They judged the contact itself. They looked at the racing lines. They considered the position of the cars. They decided Hamilton had contributed enough to deserve punishment. But Russell's explanation adds context that the penalty alone cannot provide. Hamilton was not attacking a Mercedes operating normally. He was closing on a car that had lost a significant part of its performance. Russell was not defending from a normal speed. He was trying to survive while the electrical system failed beneath him. That is why he said the incident should not have happened. With normal power, the cars may never have reached the corner in the same configuration. Russell may have remained ahead. Hamilton may not have been close enough to attack. The field may have stretched instead of compressed. One technical failure changed every decision that followed. And this is where the supposed telemetry becomes so important. The public has not been given a complete Mercedes technical report confirming every percentage and every system failure Russell described. Mercedes has not released a detailed battery trace showing the exact state of charge at each point. That means the 35% deficit and 0% battery claims come from Russell's own explanation. But those claims are specific. He did not say the car felt a little slow. He identified the first corner. He identified the recharge failure. He identified the boost. He identified the turbo. He identified the battery level at Eau Rouge. That level of detail suggests the driver was not inventing a vague excuse. He was describing information that would have been visible in the car systems and available to Mercedes after the incident. The question is whether the complete telemetry would confirm every part of his account. And history makes that question more interesting. Russell has previously raised performance concerns at Spa that Mercedes engineers later examined through data. Sometimes the driver's immediate feeling matches the telemetry. Sometimes the full analysis reveals a more complicated picture. A driver feels the car from inside the cockpit. He senses acceleration, balance, braking, and energy. Engineers see hundreds of channels: battery state, turbo speed, throttle position, engine output, deployment rate, harvesting, wheel speed, gear selection, temperature. The driver may correctly feel the symptom while misunderstanding the exact cause. Or the data may prove he was completely right. That is why the full telemetry matters. Russell's claim is already powerful. The engineering trace would determine whether the battery failure alone created the entire speed loss, or whether several systems failed together. His explanation suggests the second possibility. The battery did not recharge. The boost problem remained. The turbo did not recover. That is not one isolated weakness. It is a chain. And chains are dangerous because one failure can amplify the next. The car may enter a corner with insufficient energy stored. The system may then fail to harvest enough during braking. The battery level remains low. The electric assistance becomes limited. The turbo response may also become compromised. Then the combustion side of the power unit cannot fill the missing performance quickly enough. The driver reaches the straight with less total power. The rival closes. The race changes. Modern Formula One cars are deeply interconnected. The engine cannot be understood separately from the battery. The battery cannot be understood separately from harvesting. Harvesting cannot be understood separately from braking. Braking cannot be understood separately from the driver's approach to the corner. One unusual event at turn 1 can influence the entire run toward Les Combes. That appears to be what happened to Russell. The battery failed to recover where Mercedes expected. The missing energy followed him out of the corner. Then the system continued falling behind. By the time he reached the most power-sensitive part of the opening lap, the Mercedes had nothing left to protect him. That is the real technical horror of the incident. The failure was not waiting at the end of the straight. It began before the straight existed. Russell carried the deficit with him, and the circuit magnified it. Spa is unusually demanding because the distance from the first corner to the Kemmel straight places energy management under immediate pressure. The car brakes heavily into the opening hairpin. That braking event offers an opportunity to harvest energy. The system should collect part of the energy that would otherwise disappear as heat. Then the car accelerates away. It climbs through Eau Rouge. It reaches the long straight. The harvested energy can be deployed to support acceleration. If the battery does not recharge at turn 1, the car begins the next sequence with a deficit. If the system also fails to recover normally afterward, the driver reaches Kemmel without the electrical reserve Mercedes designed the lap around. That is why Russell's statement was so specific. The first corner was not simply where he noticed the problem. It may have been where the entire failure began. And the 35% figure shows how severe the performance drop may have been immediately. A 35% deficit does not mean the complete power unit lost exactly 35% of all possible output. The source does not define the measurement that precisely. It may refer to the expected electrical deployment, the available battery contribution, or another internal comparison. But however Mercedes measured it, Russell believed the car was dramatically below normal performance. The effect on the circuit was obvious. Several cars passed. He could not defend. He reached the braking zone surrounded. That is the physical proof. The Mercedes was not operating at the speed its starting position suggested. And that failure could not have arrived at a worse championship moment. Russell entered Belgium already behind Antonelli. The gap between them was 25 points before the race. Antonelli had built that advantage through 5 consecutive Grand Prix victories. His confidence was rising. His consistency was improving. And Russell had already admitted that Antonelli had done a better job during the season. That was a remarkable statement. Russell was not hiding behind experience. He was not dismissing Antonelli's form. He accepted that his teammate deserved to lead. But he also knew the championship gap had been influenced by more than pure pace. A Monaco drive-through penalty had cost him around 15 points. Mechanical issues had interrupted other opportunities. And now Belgium threatened to turn a manageable deficit into something far more serious. Russell started near the front. Antonelli remained ahead. Russell needed to reduce the gap. Instead, he retired on the first lap. Antonelli continued. Every lap Antonelli completed increased the damage. The championship was no longer being shaped only by who drove faster. It was being shaped by which Mercedes completed the race. That is where reliability becomes political inside a team. Both drivers are supposed to receive equal machinery. Both expect the same support. Both understand that mechanical failures can happen. But when one driver repeatedly loses major results through technical problems, the standings begin telling an incomplete story. The points show Antonelli ahead. They do not show every opportunity Russell lost. That does not mean Antonelli's lead is undeserved. Russell himself said Antonelli had performed better. But a technical retirement removes the chance to answer on the circuit. Russell could not fight back. He could not recover. He could not change strategy. He could not use tire management. He could not pressure his teammate. The race ended before any of that became possible. That is why this failure may have been a turning point. A 25-point gap can change quickly. One victory can reduce it. One poor race for the leader can transform the championship. But a retirement while the leader continues creates the opposite swing. The driver who was chasing falls further behind. The pressure increases. The next race becomes more urgent. And urgency changes behavior. Russell may feel he must attack earlier. He may take more risk in qualifying. He may become less willing to accept a supporting strategy. He may fight Antonelli more aggressively. Not because he has lost control. Because the technical failure has removed some of the patience a driver can normally afford. A championship leader can manage. A driver falling behind must recover. And when the deficit was created partly by reliability, the emotional frustration becomes even stronger. Russell can study his mistakes. He can learn from Monaco. He can improve one qualifying lap. He cannot recharge the battery from the cockpit. He cannot repair the turbo while climbing Eau Rouge. He cannot force electrical energy into the car. The machine removed the opportunity before he could influence the result. That is one of the harshest experiences in Formula One. The driver receives the public judgment. The standings show 0. The teammate moves ahead. But the failure began inside a system controlled by engineers, software, hardware, and energy management. Russell's race disappeared because the car did not deliver what it promised. And that promise was especially important for Mercedes. Its greatest strength throughout the season had been energy efficiency.